3. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Pro632 Radio. We are live with tuner extraordinaire Jeff Pierce. He's only tuning Lexi Tanner's car this year, Pro632, or you got some more cars coming up?
Just Lexi this year, 632.
So, hey, welcome, Jeff Pierce. Go ahead, tell us about yourself and everything you got going on.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Name's Jeff Pierce from Oklahoma. I got into tuning back when I was 12, 13 years old. My dad had some pro street cars at the time that evolved into pro mods. Kind of did that for a little bit. And then when I got into college, I started tuning some friends of mine and then turned into customers. And then by the time I got out of college, I just started tuning full time and been doing it ever since. So that was in 2012 when I graduated. So however many years that is. So
2012.
What was your college background in, Jeff? Was it something that applied to motorsports?
Mechanical engineering. So I have a degree in mechanical engineering for the University of Tulsa.
Nice. I'm sure that comes in handy. So in between races and tuning adventures, what do you guys do? I understand you have a shop at your place and at your dad's place, and you guys do some car work as well.
Correct. Yeah. So basically now tuning kind of fills up most of my schedule, but when I do have time, I rewire cars, we repair cars, mostly pro mod style cars, some 632s, top sportsman, stuff like that. Basically we can do anything in our shop. We just don't advertise it because it's basically mostly for my customers or friends of friends and stuff like that. I'm trying to get better at saying no to some of those because they turn into projects that get brought in and then I'm gone too much to work on them. So I'm trying to be better about that. I'm actually currently at KTR right now working on some cars here. So it's one of those things, the busier I get, that's hard to work from home and work at my shop. But we do have, like right now, I've got 2 cars in there that are customer stuff that basically aren't super in a hurry. And so I'll work on them when I get back.
Well, all that being said, I know your dad has an X275 car, and I know the exploits of you guys' family's nitrous car and working on guys like Kai Kelly and Stevie's blown cars. And then I know you had success with Oxus in the Midwest deal with his turbo car. What's your favorite style of car to tune?
I really like them all. I have a soft spot for nitrous cars just because that's what I started in. Me and my dad, from when I was a kid, that was basically, we've always run nitrous cars up until a couple of years ago when we finally went ahead and got a screw blown car to race pro mod with. We've always had nitrous cars. So that I have a soft spot for them. Here lately, I do have a lot of screw blown customers and I enjoy that. But I really like it all. As long as we're still evolving and working on the program, I like it. Even the 632 stuff, the 632 stuff's been really interesting because it's not big power by any means. So it's a lot about efficiency and trying to get the most out of the power you have, which we do in pro mod, but not to the level like we do in 632.
So that being said, in 632, how much testing, let's say an existing team, like you spoke of Tanner's earlier, they're an existing car coming on back. How much testing are you guys going to try to do before the season and or during the season? Are you guys able to get anything in between races?
So when her program was kind of in its infancy, like the first season or so, we did a lot of testing. Not so much. We always would do a preseason test that was usually a couple days, like a lot. But then we always made sure and made every single run on Thursday. As her program has evolved, luckily now we have a very good handle on our trans and converter package, a very good handle on our chassis. So really testing is trying some different engine components. As you know, she runs a PAT motor now. So Musi, if he comes up with something that he wants us to try, we'll try that. Or we're scrubbing tires or stuff. So testing has become less. which I think is a good thing. I think the class is still it's not supposed to be a pro mod as far as expense and time. So I'm glad that it's not just wearing them out as far as testing. And she's in college. She's actually becoming a veterinarian. So her schedule is tough, especially in the spring and the fall when she's in school. So Thursday testing is tough, and then even like just getting out to test. But when we've had gremlins, we went and tested her. We've taken the car to a Midwest race and entered in Pro 420 or something to get some extra test laps in, but not as much as we have been in the past.
When you're looking at these PDRA Pro 632 cars and you're looking for places to squeak out some performance, where do you think some of the biggest gains are left in these deals?
You got out for a second. What'd you say?
I said, where do you think in the Pro 632 type of category, as you analyze the package and the rules, where do you think that some of the performance gains on the track, where is your focus? Is it heavy on the engine side or trans-converter gearing combination, or where are you really focused on these cars?
So let me back up here for a second. So I can't remember what year it was, but I originally started with Chris Holdorf. The Salemis, John and Jim recommended me to go help them, and I started helping them. And I think I helped them for 2 years, Chris. You probably remember.
It was 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, 2 or 3 seasons. And we got to work on some stuff. They were willing to test some stuff, but sometimes it was more just, let's work on what we got at the track. Then the next 632 customer I had was Amber Franklin. And luckily with that program, we were able to do quite a bit of testing. And I really worked with Mark Mickey and came up with a really good converter and transmission package. And I have tried to improve upon it over the last 2 or 3 years. And so far I have yet to find anything better. So with that being said, that's kind of helped make it where we're not working on that area of the car as much. Typically the main focus is any chassis adjustments we need to do for that specific racetrack, and then tuning for the air, and then trying to find horsepower. Even the horsepower thing's kind of starting to get tapped out. I'm kind of curious. I know we took weight off, and that will help some as far as making the cars a little faster, but I feel like we need something to shake the class up just a little bit. I'm very pro one combination, and I'm glad that the class is heading that direction. Like, I want to see everybody have, the same size engine, the same size nitrous kit, the same amount of gears in their transmission. I'm a fan of that, but I do think we need something to shake it up. I think I have a logbook that I have a lot of runs in, and so I know what to do in certain conditions. And that makes it tougher for a guy that's maybe just entering the class that doesn't have that stack of runs to go look at. So if we shake it up where my logbook isn't as relevant as it used to be, then I feel like that could be benefit to some of the newer guys coming into the class.
That's a great point and a good outlook on it, for some parity for sure.
It's always a toss up between, the 400 and the Liberty and what's better, what's not better. And I said it before in other shows, Nicole had admitted that her car's faster on a 3-speed Liberty than it is on a 5.
Right.
Just because she said, in her words, we found out my motor likes the tug.
Got it. That makes sense.
Well, that means the rules are good.
Yeah. Listen, I tested all last week with Mickey in Orlando, and I had a shifting
Mickey Thompson
tires,
okay.
My favorite tire company. And we had some transmission shifting issues going on, just time and RPM stuff in the grid. And it double tapped itself, went from first to third. And when it hit third and it started pulling, I'm like, man, this is like a power glide, obviously, right? And I'm like, this thing's just pulling away. And you look at the G meter on the graph, it just went up like a bandit. And I'm like, a mistake might have led me somewhere. You know what I mean? Yep. And that's the way I look at it. I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? But, we finally, with all the testing we did find a new tire out there that's available to everybody for a Mickey, and it works. I'm going to get sidetracked here a little bit because I have to talk about that Bubba radio. That Bubba radial is badass. Matt picked up 6 numbers changing tires on his dragster.
Oh wow,
And it was 2 mile an hour.
that's awesome.
No track. I mean, went right from regular, buyer's ply track prep, everything that, people running down on big bubbers. They didn't drag nothing. All they did was drag it for 2 days. They didn't spray nothing, just drag that thing because it was all over prep from the previous weekend. And we went down there right out of the box, went 68, went 63, and then ended at 61 and 2 mile an hour faster, just changing a tire.
That's
And
awesome.
the tire was getting faster as we were putting runs on it.
Out of curiosity, because I'm not sure, I know in some classes they do, but does 632 have any rules against radials? Because I know some classes say you have to run a bias ply tire.
No, you can run a radial. And Jason
Hold
Bolton just said that our cars are just too much power for that radial, but it would be good on a 470 top sportsman car.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, we're getting on the other side of that tire because the cars are too heavy, and so we tried it on Ken Kershaw's car years ago, and it just didn't like it. But Matt's been running that radial in different various forms 5 years now, 6 years.
Okay.
And then finally now they have the product out to sell. You know what I mean? But, so I left there with a good set of Mickeys, consecutive 980, 970, 60 foot, which I was struggling with all last year. I get stubborn. And as a tuner, you'll understand my stubbornness. I can't understand why we have all these holes in the chassis. And we got all the shock suspension going on. Why can't we leave like everything? Because a 959 makes on motor what we make on nitrous.
Right.
And I struggle that. I'm like, there's got to be some combination that lets this thing go, and I can't find it. I've almost used every hole in every bracket.
Yeah.
I drove Chris Bell crazy with it. Chris is like, I don't understand. I'm like, I don't either. Why doesn't it just go? I mean, if I had a 959 on it, it would go. So
a lot of it would be also the ratios we run. I mean, you got a lot more ratio in a 632 car than you do in a 959.
Well, I've been from one end of the spectrum to the other in the last year. I mean, everything from a 158 first gear to a 170, and everything from, what a Mountain Motor Pro stock has in it, all the way to a 543, and just threw everything at it, and nothing seemed to like it, And I know, and as a tuner, this stuff. If you have a problem and you reach out to somebody, they want to put you into center at 58, 60, because that's where it works in a pro nitrous car, right? That's where the number is. That's what that instant center wants to be, and it's like we don't have the power for that, right. And that's the biggest thing. I got help from a really good friend of yours a while back, and he was like, put that thing out to lunch, way out there, throw it out there, it'll go down. And he was right. You know what I mean? It went down. And then, like everybody else, you get lost.
Right.
And then it was Chris Bell goes, well, what's changed? And I went, well, we moved this bar bracket and this and that and all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, it used to work. And I said, well, I'll give you the initials. JB goes, it needed to be out there. And we put it out there again. And we went right downtown in Virginia, where we were, where he told us to go, and farther now. You know what I mean? Just to get it to work.
Right.
But I'm stubborn. Like I said, I'm stubborn, and I just go, a 959 goes down. You know what I mean? Why can't these 632 cars go down with everything? Yours probably does, and God bless you if you got it to work. You're a mad scientist if you did, right? But there's a bunch of I just can't. I hate seeing that check in the timing just to get it to go. I don't understand it. That's my struggle. But we've been everywhere with it, and watching your performance in like an Amber's car, that thing was on fire.
Yeah.
Out of last year she was out, that thing was on fire. I mean, the finals was unreal. I mean, that car was just going.
Yeah. The lockup's definitely like, I know the rules have changed, and I can't remember because it's been a couple of years ago, but when at that time, the lockup definitely had an advantage. And the only reason we put it in Amber's car for the last 3 races that year was because we were preparing her for Pro Nitrous. Obviously we run a lockup with a Liberty and the Pro Nitrous car. So we're like, let's put the same drivetrain in so she can get used to putting it in and out of gear, going in reverse, staging it and all that. So when we put the big motor in, she'd be comfortable, at least with that part of the process. And so we did it, and we were actually surprised because we thought maybe it might be faster, but we didn't realize that it was a solid 2 numbers for sure at that time.
Yeah.
And you guys split it in there for Bristol, which just happened to love the 5-speed as well.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure not by mistake.
Yeah. I don't know if Jason knows this. Like, me and Chris have had this conversation, but I'm a big proponent of a little more nitrous in these cars. I feel like when we get into the 3,000 plus foot air, we don't have enough power really for the style of chassis and tire and stuff we have. I'd like to have a little bit. So, plus I feel like, and Chris, I don't know if 100% agrees with me on this, but I do feel like that our motors have become very pro stockish, we'll call it, very efficient motors. Maybe if we had a little more nitrous, somebody wouldn't have to spend quite as much on their motor program. We can maybe reel that back in.
Let's have a little bit of back and forth about that quickly, because what's your opinion of, you take, like, say, a top tier program, let's use like the program style you had with the Franklins, and now you allow them, and everybody, some more nitrous. I just feel like the good, well-funded, time allotted for testing and all that kind of stuff. Like you said, if Pat comes out with something new, it'll just be that much faster. I just don't see where that would close the gap between some of the older engines and, say, a newer engine.
It may very well not. I mean, I'm probably grasping at straws there, a little bit. The other thing is I want the class to be a little faster, because me and Tommy Franklin talk about this, because he still loves the class even though Amber's not in it anymore. But we always talk about it as it's a good stepping stone class for some people to move into Pro Mod. That doesn't mean everybody. Some people are going to go into 632. They love it. It fits their budget. It fits their, what they want to do. But for some people, it's we've had a lot of young kids, Amber Franklin, Lindsay Tanner, Camry Caruso. There's quite a few people that have used it as a stepping stone class. Well, I think we need to be running 4.0s consistently, possibly run a high 399 or 398. But I think that's a better stepping stone, because just even taking Amber, the fastest she'd ever been was a 408. She only did that once. She went a bunch of, let's say, 415 to 425 runs. And we took her and put her into a 360 Pro Mod car. She did great, and she's still learning, and she's a very cautious driver, which is excellent. But that's a huge step. It doesn't sound like a lot, because people are like, oh, it's a half a second. Well, a half a second's a lot. A tenth of a second's a lot. So I think if we could get that gap a little bit tighter, it would be a good class. Plus, I think that, like, look at the PR that was around Mountain Motor Pro Stock. Can they go in the threes? How close? It took forever for them to do that. I think if you can every once in a while dip in the threes, I think it just has like a nice ring to it, especially if you only can do it once or twice a year when the weather and the track's just perfect for it, So how much it's going to do, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously going to speed the class up, but my old rule of thumb is 150 pounds is a tenth. So 50 pounds should be about 3 to 4 numbers.
Yeah. So, and I even alluded to it a little bit last week in the show, of a way to maybe incorporate the Mountain Motor cars and the 632 cars together, to where you could run a 632 nitrous engine or a Mountain Motor normally aspirated 830-inch engine together. So, I mean, it might take a jet in the low 40s or something like that to be able to stack those cars in on top of each other, and that might create that little bit of spice that the class is lacking at the moment too, as well. Just having a little bit of a rivalry, as well as multiple combinations in there, but also one combination for the nitrous and then one for the NA side. So that's something I think we got to have car count to have a class. And that's kind of my whole idea of this whole deal, is I don't want to see it dwindle.
No, so I agree. Anything we can do to get more cars. The only negative that I would see there is the NA car is going to be affected by air more than a nitrous. Even though we limit how much nitrous, we're not going to be affected as bad when the air changes.
Sure.
So then you're going to constantly be, well, the mount motor car has the advantage. Nope, now the nitrous car has the advantage. We're going to go back and forth. I really was glad when we've narrowed it down to everybody's got a 632 now. And I'm a proponent of getting rid of lockups only because I think that's an added expense we don't need in this class.
Yep.
And I'm even fine with limiting it to 3 gears. Now, I don't think we should limit what transmission you can run. I just think that that's kind of, makes everybody run the same thing. But I think if, a 3-speed Lenco, a 3-speed Liberty, a 3-speed B&J, a 3-speed M&M, or Turbo 400 trans, any of those would be fine and just kind of head that direction. And there's only a couple cars that are running lockups right now anyway. So I just think if we can start steering the ship that direction, that doesn't mean outlaw outright, but maybe just start to get it where it's more in favor of running the non-lockup 3-speed, no different than like Nicole found. So if we can keep going that direction and eventually nobody's running them, then you eventually just write it out of the rule book.
Then I think another thing that would be huge too is then at that point, it would be easier for tech to not even have it in the car at all. So rather than have a lockup capability, but say you're not using it, and then tech has to try to police that. I think that would take it out of the equation too. You can't have any clutch packs in the converter, or anything in the input shaft, or not input shaft, but to feed it and have that circuit, and it would just be clean and easy rather than going, oh, I have a lockup, but I'm not using it. And then
I agree with that. I mean, if you were running NHRA and they would never allow you to have the lockup in the car and just say you're not using it.
And I mean, it's relatively common knowledge that was going on some this year too. It just, in my opinion, that's tech's job, not the racer's job. So just let that be. But yeah, I think that would be much easier. Any other changes besides, adding some nitrous? I mean, I know as we start taking weight off these cars, they just get more and more expensive. Some guys, have an older car, which was part of the allure of 632 as it was, where an older car could be competitive. But then it starts to get tough for them to start getting light. Anything other than just some more pounds per hour through the nitrous system, spice that up a little bit?
Yeah, probably mostly that. On the weight front, I was actually surprised because, I probably don't follow along enough on the conversations the 632 guys have and stuff. I just kind of just let them do what they want, and we just kind of race with it. But I was surprised about the weight deal, and I was shocked that there were so many people in favor. Like when I asked PDRA, like how many guys, and they said that the majority of the class all wanted to take weight off, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm fine with it if that's what they want to do. I don't know how much weight everybody has in their cars, so that's not a bad thing. But yes, we need to be cautious because obviously, like my driver's, a lightweight driver, so we can get fairly light, but not everybody's going to be able to do that. And you don't want to make people have to have a titanium and stuff in their car. It's not that class.
This isn't that type of category. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still think one of the best cars you can go get is a 20 or a 2004 up to a 2015 Pro Stock car. I think that's still a really good car for the class. And like my dad, a couple of years ago, he bought a Pro Stock Grand Am that was like an 03 Bickle car. It had Ness adjustable brackets in it. Nice car. We changed some shocks and stuff around, but for the most part, the car we left alone. And by the time it's said and done, we had about 40 grand in the rolling chassis, which really isn't terrible. If we can do that, I don't know how to keep the motor price in check. I wish I did. I'm not a fan of like cast head rules or any of that because I think we live in an age that billet has become reasonable, very reasonable. So I hate to limit people on some of that stuff. But if there was a way to do it, I would be in favor of it. But I just don't know how. But I hope that we can keep the motors where they're. I mean, Chris. I mean, if I called you right now, what would a 632 top of the sheet motor go for?
Just ask Patrick. Got a brand new one being built.
About 70. if we were in a car that we could tote the weight of a iron block, which is my preference, it'd be about 75,000.
Okay, so 70, you got
which is
75 grand.
expensive, but unfortunately, that's what it takes these days to have all the right stuff in there
Yep.
Yeah,
to make them both powerful and durable.
Yep, and you're gonna have 15 grand in a trans and converter, so you're looking at 90,000. So if you can pick up a car for 40 or 50,000, at least we can be under 150. I wish it would be closer to that 100 grand number. I don't know why. I always thought that was a good number, but we got to keep it somewhat reasonable. Some people have made the comment, "Oh, this is just expensive as building a Pro Nitrous car." No, trust me, it's not. If you go build a brand new Pro Nitrous car, you're going to spend at least $125 on the motor. You're going to spend in the drivetrain, you're going to spend probably another 25,000 at least. And then you've got the car that's 225 to 275 now. So we need to
requirement of a lot more spares.
Yeah, a lot more spares, titanium parts. The engines are more expensive. The rear gears you have to run, and the size of everything, and the beefiness and all that. So if we can keep it where it's a reasonable price class, I think that's a big deal. The other thing is and I'm probably guilty of this too, just because I don't have as much time, but I think a lot of people would run the class if they could get more help and there was more knowledge out there. We're all very tight knit with our information, which I do this for a living, so that's why I'm like that. But if more people could get some help, I think it would help. I think some of these guys get to the races and then they see that they're 5-6 numbers behind or a 10th behind, and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to get help. Luckily there are some good vendors out there that do provide information that help. Jason mentioned Chris Bell. Chris Bell's a good friend of mine, and he's always willing to help people that run his shocks. And so hopefully we can keep moving that along and trying to help some of these guys get into the class and enjoy themselves and have success quickly.
And like guys like Mark Mickey, he'll get you on a setup that may not be the same exact thing that you've scienced out on your own outside of his shop, but he'll get you on the right track and get you set up with some equipment that, his customers are using in that category, not specific, hey, this is what Jeff's doing, but, point you in the right direction from experience.
Yeah.
So
and a good example of that's Rini. I mean, Rini went and got a motor from Pat. It was at one of Amber's old ones, but Pat freshened it for him. And then Rini got with some, I believe he runs a Mickey, but I'm not 100% sure on that. ATI. Yep, that's right. I should have realized that. But he got a good converter program, good transmission program, and he went to the front right away. So I think that's great. I mean, I just wish that more people had that avenue.
Well, I mean, I help out a newcomer come into the class. I'll give them enough information to get them in the right direction. I'm not going to give them the shit to beat me. You know what I mean? Obviously, that'd just be dumb on my part. But right. I'll give, you know what I mean? Patrick, I help him out as much as I can. Be like, hey, I do the old Brandon Schweitzer because he did it to me when I first started with him. When I got my fuel injection, we were in Maple Grove, and he goes, what fuel you running? And I look, I said, right there. And he goes, man, if I was you, I drive around the pits and see what other people in your competition's run. And I go, well, just save me the time and tell me. He goes, I can't tell you. You need to figure that out on your own. So it's like, I kind of go by that. It's like, I wouldn't be doing that. I would, look at something else. Like my biggest proponent is knock the carburetors off the top of the cars. Just put some fuel injection on, make your life so much simpler. It's not black voodoo. Do they need a Jeff Pierce, or a Jamie Miller? I don't have one. I mean, I got my stuff handed to me in a box. I bolted it on, and, Brandon went on there 3:00 in the morning, and we were running it. He did drivability in my shop through Team Viewer, and he said, see you later, buddy. But I knew that going in, right? And I'm like, okay, I melted my first motor the first day out. Not bad. I heard it,
Hey, to that point, Jason, right? So, I had those stupid carburetors. Not want to say stupid carburetors, but I had carburetors on the car with the Fuel Tech system. They don't like each other. Fuel Tech and carburetors, they want bigger. They want that Fuel Tech injection system. We switched to fuel. Man, I can't speak. We switched to fuel injection, and the car left every single pass. And you talk, Jeff, in regards to helping people out. Jordan's my tuner. He asks people here or there to get just enough information, to get the car to run. We got the car running, then drove to Tennessee or wherever the hell we drove to and raced, and it worked every single pass.
Yep.
We didn't go to the dyno. We weren't on the hub dyno testing it and getting it running. We made what we thought was a relatively safe combination, and we just gradually went from there and moved on with assistance from people giving us, hey, I wouldn't do this. You might want to look here, look there for this to make this work better. But those things gradually got us to better. And it's the same when we did his car to fuel injection with small help from somebody else. And Jordan himself has been tuning it for the most part, the mountain motor car on a fuel injection, with little help from anybody. But, because you're all, hey, this is my world. If you want my help, we're going to have to pay a lot of money. And for, someone like myself who's been trying to rebuild an engine for over a year, I don't have the additional funds for that. So I have to grow and learn it myself. But to caveat to that, and we talk data, because we're a data-centric world now versus the mechanical world we used to live in, especially for all of us who are fuel injected. And you talk about your logs of, your race book of how years and years of data. From your perspective, what data is actually important to make the best tuning capabilities, buying different sensors that would be best used for, like, for example, I'm debating on buying a wheelie bar sensor to know load on the wheelie bar. Yeah. Is that $500 worth it? What type of log book, per se, do you run for a nitrous car and gather that type of data that would be most pertinent for all of us who are trying to learn and get those data? What data is most important for us with a single system car?
So actually, believe it or not, Stevie at KTR has a really nice logbook that he's made that we use for the blown stuff, but he also made a nitrous version. It's a really nice logbook. The main thing is just keeping good notes, and you'll start to learn what you need to write down. But if anything I can't see on the data, I write down. So, like, obviously, like, tire pressure is a big one. There's no sensor in the world that's going to tell me what the tire pressure was. I mean, well, I take that back. There are sensors, but we don't put them on our race cars. But that's why you want to write that down, because you need to know if you change a gear ratio in the transmission. You want to write that down, especially in a non-lockup setting. You can't 100% tell what ratio is in your transmission because it's never locked up. So you want to write that down. You want to write down what stator's in the converter, because there's no way for me. I can tell you, well, this is looser or tighter, but I can't tell you which stator it is by just looking at a graph. So any of that stuff, I always tell them write down. As far as sensors, I do try to be a little more budget oriented with, like, a 632 style customer. So, like, for example, shock sensors, the fronts, you need one on each front because they're independent of each other. But sometimes we'll only put one on the rear, because unless the customer is going to spend time at the chassis shop changing anti-roll bars and stuff, the shocks move together because they're tied together with an anti-roll bar. So sometimes you can just put one shock sensor on the back of your car, get the information you need from run to run, and know how to adjust your four-link and stuff. But you don't really need a left and a right. You brought up a wheelie bar sensor. Wheelie bar sensors are good. There's nothing wrong with them. I would, if you don't already have it, I would put a front ride height sensor on before I put a wheelie bar sensor on, because the wheelie bar sensor only tells you if you're touching the wheelie bar, which is good to know. But you can kind of tell that when you put a front ride height sensor on. But then you can also see when you're not on the wheelie bar what your front end height is doing. So that's a sensor that's fairly pricey. I mean, depending on which one you buy, it can cost you anywhere from $500 to $800, but that's valuable information, I feel like. Obviously, like transmissions, typically you have an inlet and exhaust pressure, one going into the converter, one to go out of the converter. Those are pretty important. Typically, if you're going to pick one of those, you pick the exhaust side of the converter. As far as I'm trying to go through the car, obviously you need a nitrous pressure sensor. That's, pretty relevant. And then I'm a big fan of on NA type stuff. I don't run any EGTs. I just run O2s, and I don't necessarily run all 8. I do like to have all 8 if it's a possibility, but sometimes if it's not a possibility, I'll run 1 or 2 typically, if we do 2, we do 1 on either side, and maybe we go ahead and put the bungs in the headers so I can move it around so I can kind of compare, like maybe I'll run it in 1 and 2 for a little while. Well, then I'll take and move from 2 to 4, but I'll leave the 1 and 1 because I know, hey, this is how close 1 and 2 were. Let's see how close 1 and 4 are. And then over time, you can kind of balance your motor and you get a tune-up for your motor that's happy. I'm still old school. I like to read spark plugs, so that's, you don't have to have a sensor for that. But there's, you can definitely make this overcomplicated, but the biggest thing with logbooks that I always tell people is focus on writing down the stuff that you can't see in your race pack. Like the launch RPM, I still write it down, but you can kind of see that in the data. But stuff like, what's inside your torque converter, what fluid you ran, when's the last time you changed the fluid in your transmission? That kind of stuff is important, and I always write it down in the logbook. So
going back to the O2 readings, how much difference have you seen now that we pick jets every different race?
I have not seen hardly any difference. I have had Jamie Miller came up to me, I think it was either the first or second race, and asked that same question to me. And he's like, oh my gosh, like I got a set that was way different than another set. I do not see a whole lot of difference. Now, the only thing I could say to that is maybe depending upon how your nitrous system is plumbed and what your, maybe what kind of solenoids they are, maybe it's more sensitive to slight changes in the jet size. But I have not had that problem. I've heard some people say it, but I personally have not felt like they're completely different. Lexi's, I don't think I've really, I kind of had a good handle on her motor when we started doing that. And I don't know that I've touched the whole Roland ton. Obviously, if I see something, I'll make a little small change, but we're talking 1-2%, nothing crazy.
So in reference to what Jamie asked you, we didn't necessarily say, okay, these jets are slower. It was more of a, with having 1002s on the car or having, certain cylinders that were different than a different set of 8 jets prior month, so just stuff moving around a bit, just from moving a different set of jets to a different set of cylinders, not like, oh, these are down 2 mile an hour, they're terrible, but just having to do some fuel trim work to get it back where it was most happy.
Yeah, and then that's what he told me too. He says not that the car's slow or fast, it was just hole to hole we're getting to change the tune-up. The only other thing I could think of, because of course then you start thinking, well, why am I not having this problem and someone else's? And as I pondered it, and I never mentioned this to Jamie just because I never thought to mention it again, but the only thing I could think of is, Chris, this because you've seen it probably a lot. If you start to rank down on those nitrous kits over and over, like you take the jet out and you put another jet in, you rank down on it again. If you go flow it like on a flow bench or just flow it in your car, they will leak out the top. You can mess up that flare. And so maybe it's a possibility some of these teams, just because they weren't typically changing jets that often, now we're changing them every week or every race weekend. Maybe we're seeing some inconsistencies there. Possibly.
That's a good point you bring up, because every race we're taking that off 2-3 times, where we won't take them off for the entire season.
Yeah, and it's 1980s technology. This is not something new we came up. Yeah, this is a flared pipe fitting. It's like when people talk about solenoids and what's inside their solenoid. Yes, you can modify the bodies a little bit, but the plunger and the coils, those have been around for 40, 50 years, probably. Mm-hmm. We're not changing those for whatever reason, and mostly because they work. They work great. Why change it? So. I did a lot of stuff with nitrous kits and trying different kits. I thought at one point I was onto something, and then I changed some stuff back around and found out that I don't think I was onto anything. I really think that with the jet we have right now, that there's not a whole lot you can do. If you build a nice, clean, conventional nitrous kit, it works just fine. I don't think, which once again is nice for the budget guy, because you're not having to go spend extra money on a special nitrous system, which I think is important,
that, I think all the stuff that we're doing now on the modern day nitrous system, especially just being a dry kit, our standard issue stuff of 2025 or 2026 is trick for 2015. We weren't, focused on lines and insulation and trash cans, and now all that stuff just how we do it. So a current day nitrous system, how we do it now, is the trick of the week of 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So I think that's some of what maybe you're saying there as well. Is it's as trick as it can get with our 70s aircraft technology.
Do you think that we need to start looking at more rules that shouldn't affect anyone currently, but prevents people from going overboard in the class? Like, I'm talking, direct injection rules against it. Possibly, like F1 cars, they place the injector outside the throttle body and spray it. They actually sprays away from the throttle body into a cone that like basically fans the fuel out over the air coming in. Some of this stuff could get expensive, and it's also stuff that isn't readily available. Is that, should we have rules against that stuff? Like, even
I think we could add some simple additions to the rules, and like one injector per cylinder, and have it placed in the runner. That's going to paint with a broad enough brush that it doesn't rule anything out, but it keeps multiple injectors. I'm familiar with some mountain motor stuff that I help a little bit with, and we've got an injector in the throttle body and an injector in the runner. So we idle it on one and we go wide open on another, and it's worth something, but that's, like you say, a lot of dyno time, a lot of complications, some additional expense. And that's not really what I think 632 is about. So yeah, there could be some simple language in there that doesn't have an effect on anybody currently, but it's also one of those things I always advocate for, is making the rules to the potential of the rules, not for what somebody's doing with it. And so if we just say, hey, no one's doing that right now, well, then somebody spends the time, money, and effort, which is within the rules, and does it, and then you make it illegal or make a change. I don't think that's fair either. So I think there is some responsibility to make the rules correct the first time and not be reactionary to guys, being hot rodders and just trying to modify stuff and make it better. So yeah, I would agree with that.
What about a spec fuel for the class? I mean, Chris, you have pro stock background where they made you run a specific fuel. What are your thoughts on the specific fuel for the class?
Oh man,
I can answer this one.
I'm torn. I'm torn on that one, honestly, because who does?
Nitrous Pro Street and the NMCA, they all had spec fuel. They had to all run the same fuel. They couldn't run anything else. They had fuel checks. What's wrong with that?
Well, they had a fuel check, but they didn't have a spec fuel. So there are certain things you couldn't run, but you could run anything that didn't.
You had to run a readily available fuel. Is that correct?
Correct.
Chris?
You had to run VP.
Okay, but you could run C23, C25, Q16, C45.
But you had to run that brand of fuel.
Got it. Yeah.
So, but
so funny story.
That all causes costs too, right? Every fuel.
Correct. But I gotta tell this story. So a mountain motor crew chief that I know well, that all you guys actually know too, I'm not going to mention his name. They had this same rule in ADRL, had to run VP fuel. They did not say that you had to run only one VP fuel. So he hired a chemist to mix different brands of VP or different types of VP fuel. So I think it had a little C25 in it, some what was the pro stock fuel, Chris? C45?
Yes.
C45, had some C45 in it and some Q16, mixed it, and he ran it, was very dominant in Mountain Motor Pro Stock for a season. When they finally figured out what he was doing, they all claimed he was cheating, and they said it was clear as day in the rule book. Must run VP fuels. Did not say must run only one.
So that's the difference there, Patrick, in what I was trying to say, in difference in a spec fuel versus a stated fuel brand.
So,
you know,
so funnily enough, the current Q16 is basically that blend that crew chief came up with. He eventually gave it to VP. They updated their Q16, and that is what Q16 that we run today is.
Which is what they consider a Q16 plus.
Yeah.
So. Plus.
Because I freaked out in the middle of a season one time because I seen this can that was C16 or Q16 plus. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. What is this? You know, and it was basically they superseded it to that. And it was, you know, I got all puckered up for a second on that. That being said about fuel, let's circle back for a second. There are some opinions stated about carburetors and fuel injection. I think we all are aware of the upside to the fuel injection systems of today, where we've got our data acquisition and our ignition and every fueling and all in one place. Are you of the opinion that carbs can't run with the EFI? Because there's probably a lot of guys looking at this class and going, "Oh shit, I don't have EFI. Should I even show up?"
I actually was thinking the same thing when we were talking about carburetors a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Because obviously I've run EFI now for the last 3-4 seasons, something like that. When I was tuning motors that Chris did, we had carburetors. The battle with carburetors is getting the carburetor right for the motor. It's not as easy as fuel injection. You buy one fuel injection system and you can spend some time and boom, it's where it should be.
Yeah, one set of injectors is like infinite amount of carburetors.
Correct.
You know.
So I mean, I was with Holdorf, like I said, for 2 seasons, and Chris, obviously, we probably had, I bet you, a dozen different sets of carburetors.
Oh yeah,
trying to get them right.
Yeah,
even to the point
me and Bob Book were on the phone full time, going, "All right, these won't go on the brake, but damn, they run good on the dynos. Can we get something in the middle?" You know?
So that's the negative. I honestly think that a carbureted, if you could get the right carburetor, I still think that maybe you could make a little more power than you could with fuel injection. Mm-hmm. Now, the counter to that is, okay, you're talking power on a dyno. When you take it to the racetrack and you've got gear changes and all these things and you're trying to get accurate fueling, it's once again easier to do with fuel injection. Now, if you could get the carburetor to do what you want it to do, and the fact that where the fuel is and it's getting atomized better and stuff like that, there's probably a little bit of power there. But if maybe you only have that power for certain parts of the run, that's better. But then there's lots of parts of the run it has less power. So the average for the run, you're down or up. So I don't think we're to the point where you can't run carburetors. As far as like pro nitrous cars, the reason we've all gone to EFI is you just have no signal when you turn 6 kits on a big motor. These motors with 136 jet, or even if you made the jet a little bit bigger, you got plenty of signal still going through the carburetor. So you could still run a carburetor. So I think if somebody really wanted to come out, let's say they were, I call it old school, like my father, for example, he does not want to plug a laptop in to tune the fuel on his motor. So he would prefer to have carburetors. If I was not around, he would have carburetors. So he would want to run that, and he would tune the motor how he's always done it with jets, and that's how he would do it. We even run into this right now in the boosted world, like on screw blown cars. I tune cars that are very successful that run fuel injection on their screw blower, and I tune cars that run mechanical injection on their screw blower that are just as successful. I don't think that in the 8th mile there's a difference between a mechanically injected screw car and a EFI screw car. Quarter mile, because we're running for a longer period of time, I think that EFI starts to show maybe a little bit of a gain, because there's certain times in the run that we, once again, just like carburetors, we can't fix with mechanical very easily, but with EFI, it's infinitely adjustable. We can change the fuel in one cylinder at the bottom of one gear, where you can't do that with a carburetor. So I don't think, though, that you can't run. You can easily be competitive, I think, with carburetors in 632 if you can get the right carburetor. So maybe if you just hit the nail on the head the first try, or you just happen to get hooked up with a really good carburetor guy that really wants to work with you, I think that's a viable option, especially for someone. I always tell people, go with your strengths. If your strength is not a laptop, don't put EFI on your
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like when we ran carburetors, I was I was moving carburetor, making new top plates and moving carburetors forward to fuel cylinders better because, we had the lean front holes and rich rear holes. So I was moving the carburetors forward and all that kind of stuff, trying to tailor that stuff. So yeah, it wasn't easy by any means. I would have loved to, at the time, to just have some throttle bodies and, call it dry air and call it good. But it definitely can be done. And if you already own that stuff, don't be afraid to come out because you can run fast with it. We went into the teens when that wasn't a regular thing back then with carburetors. And if somebody approached me and says, hey, I'm anti-EFI and I can't type, I'd say, well, call Bob Book, get your set of carburetors, let's roll, because it's doable in my opinion. Is the EFI nice? Absolutely. But it's not a must. And I don't want to convey the idea that it's a must to come in our category if you're on the outside looking in, thinking about dipping your toes in to what we do at PDRA. Jeff, I got one question for you. If you had to choose and you only get one answer between having a good car and a mediocre engine or a great engine and a mediocre car, what do you take?
In 632, the great engine and the mediocre car. I'm a big fan of saying no cars are bad. Now, part of that is I also I can fabricate. So like if the car's bad, I can fix it. I'll try to fix it. So but now engine and horsepower, that's not always my cup of tea. I mean, I know enough just to be dangerous is how I look at it. I probably drove Chris nuts calling him when I was running one of his motors and saying, well, maybe we should do this, Chris, or why don't we try this?
Let's try it.
But yeah, I think big horsepower is always helpful, especially in a class that is limited so much on horsepower. When you get into the Pro Mod stuff, it's not quite as bad, but like in 632, it's all about horsepower right now. And that's one of the reasons that I'm a proponent for the more jet. I feel like the more horsepower we have, maybe it starts falling more back onto the setup and the converter and some of the other things, and not as much just pure engine horsepower. I mean, it's obviously clear that Lexi has good horsepower. Amber had good horsepower. Chris's stuff had good horsepower at the end. I mean, what we did with the 53 Corvette was, it went, I think, at 12 at one point. And
yeah, we went 410 at Bradenton with the 53 Vet, and that was like, whoa.
And now that they're retired, I think I can openly say this because I said it a lot just in closed settings. That was the biggest hunk of junk car you could ever buy.
I'll tell you this, though. That car wasn't really bought. Let's face it. Alan made a mold for the front end of that car off of the black car in-house while he worked at the concrete company. So that car, the black car went to Pittman's to get fixed from one of its many crashes. And while it was there, there's this chassis hanging on the wall. And they're like, what's that? Oh, that's for a 53 Vet. So they took that home with them too, just in case. And then it became Christopher's new car, which, was it perfect? No, absolutely not. But it was homegrown. And I was pretty proud of those guys for doing it themselves. They didn't outsource anything. Maybe they should have at times. But this is a true story. That car was all tacked up and they needed to be finished welded. And they hired a mobile welder that they found on Craigslist to come in and finish welding that car because all the guys in the concrete shop were stick welders. They didn't know one TIG. So that's how that car got finished. And for it to go as fast as it did and have the accomplishments that it did, was it the fastest? Nope. But I'll tell you what, it was one of the ones that the guy should be the most proud of, honestly. And I think that's a testament to what some of these guys on the outside should look at too. And my question to you is basically formatted. Hopefully there's people watching or going to listen in the future to what we're talking about. And if they're saying, hey, I've only got this $100,000 to spend, how am I going to spend it? You know what I mean? So like in Jeff's free information that he put out there for us tonight, a mediocre car and spend your money on an engine. Shit, I love that idea.
Well, of course you do, Chris. But even like I said earlier, like I still think you can go find a $35,000-$40,000 roller that's got a race pack in it and adjustable shock brackets, and it's a pretty nice car. And like you're saying, if they've got $100,000 to spend, you can go maybe spend 35 on it, and you still got 65. Hopefully you can buy, maybe a motor that's a couple seasons old, but
Yeah, you can get your 2-year-old fresh engine and have some money in your pocket to go race with, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
I mean, that absolutely can make it happen. So yes, there are several $100,000 turnkey cars out there, and however, I don't think it's a must, honestly. I'm in agreement with you, Jeff. A mediocre car, it's got a lot of holes in the back to try out, and you can upgrade it along the way. When you're shy on power, you get that thing out there in high gear, it kind of shows.
And I will say that there's a lot of good quality chassis like builders around the country. There's more than we give credit for. You always hear the names of Bickle and stuff like that, but there's a lot of good ones. Clayton's one of them. When I was with Holdhorse team, I kind of knew Clayton a little bit, but not that much. And there was a couple of times that he did some stuff for us, and he always did an excellent job. And there's lots of guys around, and so typically there's somebody fairly local to you that can weld. And if let's say your 4-link brackets aren't good in your car, have them cut them out and put new ones in it. It's actually fairly reasonable. It's way less expensive than trying to go find horsepower. Let's put it that way. So spend your money on your engine and then work your way through the rest of it, I think.
So, Jeff, we got one guy on here that's been asking a couple of questions. One is, how different is your chassis setup between Pro Nitrous and 632? And then his other question is, this is all George Coleman, and he's struggling in a class. He's got that silver 67 Corvette, am I saying it right?
63.
Is it? 63?
Yeah,
Sorry.
63 bet.
What changes do you make from round to round, and what is your favorite tuning procedure? And then his last question, which everybody and most of us know this probably except for Patrick. You can run with Cobbs, but do you need to? Oh no, sorry, wrong one. Would I lose it? It was about the difference of tuning with
Zoomies versus 4-to-1.
Zoomies, yeah, carburetors and Zoomies, tricky to tune. That's what his question is. What's the difference between running Zoomies to 4-to-1 collector header?
Okay, so remind me of the first one again, and we'll just go through them.
How different is your chassis setup between Pro Nitrous and 632?
Believe it or not, and you can start with a very standard 4-link. And I'm saying standard. If you called Bickle shop
7 and 11,
there you go, 7 and 11, maybe 12 and 7.5, somewhere around there, somewhere in that ballpark. If you put it there, and you start working on, tire pressure, wheelie bar height, weight in the car, you can go relatively fast in any class. That's on a bias slick, not counting radios.
No, what do you mean by 7-11?
7 inches spread in the front, 11 inches in the back. Somewhere in that.
Okay, spreads.
If your brackets are a little different, it's going to be somewhere between a 53-inch long bar and a 58-inch long bar. If you put something like that in it, you have the bottom bar, let's say, just start off flat, that where basically the height is flat. You, in any class, whether it's a screw blown car, a Pro Nitrous car, a 632 car, a Pro Stock car, you can go down the racetrack and you can start collecting data. Not saying that's the fastest, but you can start there. So yes, in a general sense, the Pro Nitrous car is set up very similar to the 632 car. As you start to refine that, you would probably say they're not set up exactly the same for sure, but there's more differences there. Obviously, the big thing with a 632 car is you need lots of traction for the first 30 feet. You don't need a whole lot of traction at 150 feet because we're running off of all the power by just going past the Christmas tree. Well, a Pro Nitrous car, that's a different story. You need traction for the first 300 feet because you're applying power, lockups, and everything for that distance. So it's a little bit different there. The Zoomie versus collector is an interesting point. You're correct. Zoomies on carburetors is hard to tune. If I was going to try to run carburetors, I'd still run collectors. I was completely shocked when I finally put some Zoomies on Lexi's car. I really didn't think that there was going to be a power advantage running Zoomies, but her car did. Now, the interesting thing wasn't really power per se as it was 60 foot. And I don't know if it was just her car or if it was just, but it sure made it 60 foot better when we put the zoomies on, which I was very surprised at. I really fought for the collectors. I thought for the amount of nitrous we were spraying that you'd be better off to still run a collector. But when I finally put the zoomies on, I was rather impressed that they ran better early, which of course then makes it run better the rest of the run.
Now, you think because it knocks some of the torque out of the motor?
I think it's more about what it does to the chassis. There's more thrust that comes out of a zoomie pipe because you never let it expand. So if you aim that thrust in the correct direction, and then you can adjust the chassis around that to use that thrust to help add traction or push the car forward, I felt like that was the reason it helped. Yeah, yes, it kills some power, but that was it power that we needed? Kind of like Jason saying, we keep running timing curves. Well, did you need that power? Where you lost power, maybe you didn't need it because you weren't using it.
And that's the exact answer I got out of Brandon Schweitzer.
Yeah.
All right. Hey,
well, it's good that me and Brandon agree on one thing at least.
And
to end the show, there's one more question from Mr. Coleman. It's pretty much a question for all of us. What is your favorite tuning procedure? And in between rounds, what's that like?
My favorite tuning procedure?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but a big one.
Or most effective. How about that?
Most effective, like in a 632 car, weight is a huge thing. And I think a lot of people overlook that. It's not this is the weight package you should run every single run down the racetrack, and this is where you should bolt your weight. It is a fluid, living, moving thing. So, that would be one of the biggest changes we make that I think gets overlooked. And I don't know what goes on in everybody's pit. I'm just, you hear little tidbits and stuff, but, Lexi's car, she doesn't make a whole lot of runs in a row that everything's put in the exact same place as far as weight. We move weight pretty regular.
Well, me and Chris were saying that. I was in a conversation earlier today. I'm like, we'll be staging in the staging lanes, and here, the front end's coming off, the trunk lid's coming out. You guys are moving weight around, puck or two here and there, and I'm like, it's an awful lot of. I go, that's an awful lot of work. It's like, but okay,
Yeah. Well, like it's funny you mentioned that because Chris, I probably should have mentioned this. I had a lot of good mentors when I was younger, and Chris was one of them. Chris is still a good friend of mine and a mentor to me. He maybe that's why my ideology, kind of follows Chris's because he taught me early on, the effectiveness of moving some weight around in a race car.
I would have never admitted any of that. I'm just putting that out there. Because like his head's like this now. You made it like that. We can just
don't fit on the screen.
You can't make it any bigger. You
can just about see his ears now. Look at that shit.
He is one of the most intelligent human beings on the planet. I love him.
It's just a Chris thing.
It's a Chris thing for sure. But he liked to. He's gotten a renewed vigor for suspension again and shocks and drag racing. There was a time period about 5 or 6, 7 years ago where he kind of started to he lost the fascination of the puzzle, we'll call it, is what I always say. He's one of those, anyone that's highly intelligent, they do things because it's a puzzle to them. And he's definitely one of those people. And so when the puzzle is not hard anymore, you start to find a new puzzle. Well, he went and found some different puzzles. I mean, I can't get into it, but he's definitely done some work for the government and stuff. That's been some interesting stuff. But he's circled back around, and here the last 3 or 4 years for sure, he's 100% back into drag racing, which is awesome because I get to see him a lot more. Because there was a time where he wasn't hardly even coming to the racetrack anymore, and of course that's the only place I ever go. So if you don't come to the racetrack, you're not going to see me. So he now comes to the racetrack again. I got to see him last weekend, and it's been great.
Well, congratulations on your win last weekend.
Yes.
That was pretty impressive. The Winter Series has been pretty good to you. However, I don't think it was by mistake. So,
yeah. Well, hopefully, maybe 632 will gain some traction this year with a few more cars, and maybe we can present that to Wes and his group that do the Winter Series, and maybe have them back for at least one race in the winter.
Yeah, that's for sure, because there's definitely some chatter that it's going to be an all slick deal.
It wasn't a West thing. It was not a West thing.
Okay.
It was a Garrett thing.
Oh, okay.
Because we had big conversations, and I will not bring my car to Bradenton again.
Oh,
that's where the conversation went. It's at the end of the day, it's not a West thing. We don't fit their format of what they're trying to produce over there.
Well, I think though we saw it this weekend that it's getting more and more tough to prep a racetrack for both radials and slicks at the same time at a high level. So I really feel like there may be a transition coming at some of that Pro Mod Winter Series stuff where we see more and more slick tire stuff, which may play into our hand as the PDRA 632 group running in that style of prep.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Jeff, did you see that last question that just popped up on the screen?
Yeah. To answer that question, the biggest thing right now is my problem is time. I wish I could duplicate myself because we need more tuners for sure. So like right now, I can't even take on new customers. I have a list, like a waiting list, basically, of people that I have to call before I could even talk to somebody new. But it varies. I mean, you can get some guys that'll come to the track that have a good knowledge base. That'll say, $300 a day, maybe pay for a little bit of travel or something like that. That's very reasonable. And it works its way up there to, some of these top tier guys, get a couple grand a day, it just depends. And you got to find what fits you. There's some guys need a guy that's going to come every weekend with them. And that's great. And maybe you can find somebody that's a little more reasonably priced that can really help your program for that. And then some guys need somebody that's willing to say, hey, I want to hire you. I just want to go do this for a test session or a couple weekends. Are you willing to do that? But be upfront about that, because like as a tuner, that's the worst thing is we hate getting hired on for somebody that we think we're going to be tuning them for the full season. And after a couple races, they're like, oh no, we don't really, we only wanted you to show us some stuff. Well,
and then meanwhile, you declined other people that you could have had on your program for the year.
Correct. But and I'm not saying I would never take on somebody that would be a one or two. Most of it depends on what else I've got going on. Like I was approached not this winter, but the winter before, to do some testing with some 632 cars. And I declined because I have an agreement with Andy Tanner and Lexi Tanner that, we're going to continue to race as many races as they go to in 632. And because of that, I'm not going to work on other 632 cars. Not all crew or tuners and crew chiefs have that agreement. So you just got to call around and find, and I never get mad at somebody calling and asking, hey, are you available or anything like that. But, there's lots of
let me add one thing to that.
Hold on a second. Giving Kevin his question, right? So in your package of tuning, you're doing motor, falling, shock, tires, everything. Right?
Yep.
Because there's people that just do the laptop. You know what I mean?
Correct. And that might be all you need. I know some teams that's all they would need, and maybe you can get that more reasonable. Or maybe even like, let's say you needed someone to tune your EFI system. There are guys that will remote do it from home. You don't have to have the expense of paying for them to travel and get a hotel room and stuff like that. They can do that for you. And there's lots of sharp guys out there that can do it. That maybe aren't even in the 632 world. Actually, I know for a fact there's a lot that are not in the 632 world that are plenty capable of doing that kind of stuff. There's a lot of jet limited classes. They just run in like the grudge scene, or they run in a radial scene. And so there's a lot of guys that are available, especially even if you just wanted some remote help. Or I've done some deals too where you don't even talk to them a whole lot during the weekend. But on Monday morning, you send every bit of data that you got throughout the weekend. And then when they have time over a week or two, because you always have time between races, they peruse it, and then they send the recommendation. So the next time you go out, you've gotten some advice. And something like that can be very reasonable, $250 maybe, just to point somebody in the right direction.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And Patrick, earlier you're talking about sensors and data acquisition and stuff like that. So if you're in one of those settings to where you had a remote tuner that's where that would be hugely beneficial to have the more and more data acquisition, because they're not there hands-on watching the car, getting all the other sensory things to happen. So all they have to go by is black and white, nothing opinion-based, just factual data on the page. So if you were to go in that format, spend more money on your sensors and less on travel expense for your tuner, and do it maybe remote. And then Jeff, you're talking about your limited number of customers that you're able to have. A couple of years back, you were working with Holdorf, and I was doing engines for them. And over the winter, it was made known early on, which was thankful that you weren't going to be able to come back and help them. And immediately I was disappointed, but I thought about it quickly and go, well, this is great, actually, because rather than getting spread too thin and just getting a piece and expecting more, he's telling us up front so we could look around, do something different if that was the case. And I really applaud you on limiting the amount of guys that you do work for, because not everybody does that. And you can get spread too thin, and then you don't really get your money's worth, or don't feel like you get your money's worth, because you're just getting a fraction of their time. So that is a pretty important thing. And I applaud you for limiting your number of people, because it's generally beneficial to those guys that weren't able to get your time, is more so than it was a negative, so that's a pretty big deal to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's definitely tough, because a lot of the teams I end up working for become good friends and family, and it's hard to pick and choose to a certain extent. And like, even last year, Winter Series, I you get into these things where it's like, well, I want to run one of the Winter Series races. Oh, okay, I can handle that. And then the next thing you know, you're standing there and you're looking around, you got 7, 6, or 8 cars on the property. So like this year, I specifically talked to all my teams in advance, and we set up a game plan, and I picked 3 teams that was going to help through the Winter Series, just to make sure I don't get overloaded. But it's tough. I really thank God for my wife, because she goes to the PDRA races with me. At PDRA, almost all weekends, unless somebody just couldn't make it or something, I have 6 cars, and it's really tough. But my wife is amazing. She takes all the notes and writes down all the notes for the Tanners as well as the Franklins. She knows how to download Race Pack, so I can walk in and just start reviewing data, and then telling the crews what changes I want to make, or making changes on the laptop. And that's a big help. And so
what does she get for the weekend?
She gets an airplane ticket.
Oh, so that's all it takes. We'd like to hire her then.
Yeah. Right. Basically, the way I look at it, and she's fine with it because she likes to go with me, is
no, I'm trying to hire her.
Oh,
we can't get you. I want her.
Well, you can hire her. I'm trying to get her to start tuning, because I was like, we could double up here, So
now we're talking.
There you go. So maybe you can just send her some money on the side. She'll accidentally, drop a logbook in your email or something.
Nice. Now we're talking. Oh. So, I'll have to adopt some dogs to get on her good side.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If you're a dog lover, then my wife's gonna like you. That's for sure.
We just adopted one.
Oh, good. What kind?
That's not a dog.
Well, I wanted a Belgian Malinois, really.
Okay.
That's what I really wanted. And then a friend of mine who does rescue dogs, he flies them. I ended up with a Mexican Malinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that, a Chihuahua?
Yeah. It's a Chihuahua. And
Mexican Malinois.
It's a Mexican Malinois. I've never seen anything like it. I've had a lot of Chihuahuas in my life, but this one takes the cake.
Awesome.
God.
That's good.
It's a rocket. It does it like
it fits right.
It takes an hour for it to settle down to go to sleep at night, right? Because it gets small. Look,
there you go.
That Mexican Malinois.
I love it.
Right? All 4 pounds of her.
That's funny.
He's a terror. But
well, at least he's small. We have 4 large dogs. We have 3 golden retrievers and 1 lab pit mix, and currently we're staying in our motorhome at Stevie's, and I've got me, my wife, one of my good friends is here with us, and 4 large dogs. And you'd be surprised how quick a 40-foot motorhome starts to feel small. So
we got and we rescued Billy. We've had Billy for 15 years. We rescued him in Jacksonville.
Oh, awesome.
That dog there is probably the world's fastest dog on water.
Water.
He came home at 175 all the way down to St. John's River in Jacksonville.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's fearless. That dog. He's blind now, but he was fearless. So he was getting. We lost one last March, and he was having a hard time. And then my buddy posted a picture of that, and I was like, "How dumb, stupid questions? What's the deal with the dog?" Blah 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 blah. I was on the phone with. I talked to her. I sent the lady a text message on. Was it Monday? No, Sunday. I sent her a text message. I was on the phone with Matt Buck on Thursday. I said, I think I'm scot-free. I haven't heard nothing about this dog. I think we're good to go. And he's like, right? Sure shit. I hang the phone up at him. My phone goes, dee-dee. I look, and I'm like, hi, this is Susie. Minnie's ready to go, and she's just been, blah, 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 and through the vet. And, if you want, you need to pick her up. When? Today or tomorrow? New Smyrna. That's 200 miles from us. I was supposed to test on Thursday, right? Was it Thursday I was testing? No, Friday I was supposed to test. And it was just too cold in Orlando. So I ended up getting a dog and brought her home. It was Tara. I said, we ain't sleeping tonight. Not with this dog. Ain't no way. And we didn't. That dog didn't stop all night. She still doesn't stop. Doesn't stop. She met the parrot, though, today. Her and Spanky had a disagreement. She knows.
Oh.
Yeah, we have a 15-year-old African gray.
Okay.
Yep. So, all right. Well, I guess we're getting to the end of it. Since now we're talking about dogs and adoptions. I just want to say two things. Sorry to hear about Jason Reese. That he was a good guy. I didn't know him for a long time, but yelled at me every time he seen me about getting checked, and that's the only thing I keep thinking in my mind about it.
Yeah.
We're all getting that age. And I know I'm the oldest one on this screen right now, and I haven't done it, and I've always promised them I will do it, and I got to get around to it. And the other one is Will Smith. Sorry to hear that he's got skin cancer.
I didn't hear that till now. Wow.
Miss Judy posted it earlier yesterday, and Andy House is another one. Andy started with a melanoma the size of a pin on his nose, and that guy's had more cancer and survived hospice, and now he's waiting for some experimental medication to a program to get into, because this is his last hurrah for Andy. You know what I mean? I hate to knock the wind out of it, but I just want the rest of us that are all on the show and watching and listening, keep them guys in your prayers, because we're all not here for a long time. We just got to make the best of the time that we're here.
Yeah, for sure.
We appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us tonight. We got to go racing soon because we're running out of people.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for having me.
We got a whole list of people, and it's like, no, we don't want to do that one yet. We don't want to do that one yet. And it's like, some people can't make it. We're down to shuffling. But when we first started, what are we on our 8th episode, Patrick? 8, 9.
I don't know. I've lost count. I forgot to add them on to the show name every day. Hey, but just so y'all know, I just put it up there, 63 days away. No, we're 55 days away.
55 days away.
Awesome. Can't wait, guys.
I changed it. It didn't work. Let me take that off. That's false information. Hey, Jeff, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Great information. Thank you to all the people who joined us and asked some questions. The interaction between us, the guests, and the people online is very important to grow the class and get the information there that those people need to help go fast. Jeff, I'm with you 100%. The better motor will make it go faster with the Worcer car. I've always had the Worcer engine because I was always on that, hand-me-down deal because of money. Load up and spent a whole bunch of money to go fast. So hopefully I'm on top of the game this year when we're finished. But thank you very much. Anybody else? All right.
Chris fell asleep by this point.
Oh, he did. All right. Y'all have a great night.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Yeah.